Okay, welcome. We are going to start the regular council meeting for March 20th. All council members are here. They're just going to the bathroom. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wyandot peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on this land from time immemorial. I would also like to wish one of our residents, Joanne Hayes, a happy 85th birthday. And that's Councillor Verbeek's mom. They had a nice birthday weekend, and just everybody take time to wish Joanne Hayes happy 85th birthday party. Please stand for the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Okay, we will go to our closed meeting report that we had today, March 20th. Mrs. Brown will update us on our closed meeting.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can report that council met in closed session tonight, March 20th, 2023 at 4 p.m. to discuss litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or a local board, as permitted by Section 239(2)(e) of the Municipal Act, and to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality as permitted by Section 239 of the Municipal Act as well. At this meeting, council received an update on current litigation files pertaining to the municipality, and also received direction, administration received direction from council regarding the acquisition of lands in Ward 1. And that is all I have to report.
Of conflicts of interest from members of the council. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I have a declaration of conflict of interest on item 19.1.1. I'm part owner of that corporation, so we're declaring conflict.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. That is noted. I'm looking for a mover for the published agenda, but we do have an agenda item 9.1 and 10.1 that we would like to move up and consider before our other public presentations, as they are all related to our first delegation. So looking for a motion that we approve the amended agenda. Councillor Guerin and Councillor McGuire-Blaze, any questions to that? Seeing none, all in favor. And that is carried unanimously. Adoption of minutes. Looking for a mover to adopt the minutes from March 6th. Councillor Hammond, Councillor Mady, any questions on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor. That is carried. Looking for adoption of the special council meeting minutes for March 6th on the annual development update. Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Allard, any questions for those minutes? I just want to make a note that I noticed our really quick turnaround for our minutes on our agendas, and it's a great improvement. I love it. I've noticed. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, now we will go to 8. We have public presentations, or no, sorry, pardon me. Or sorry, we're going to 9. Sorry. So we have our first delegation, Mr. Gomes. You have 5 minutes to address council. You can do it at the back on the microphone, and then we will go to Mr. Abbott, who will also have 5 minutes. And then council will hear from our administration, and then we will ask questions if we need to. Thank you for coming tonight.
Give me 1 second. Well, I don't have a lot to say because I've already said enough in the last meeting and I've sent the counselors tons of information and tons of dialogue over the last 3 months. We've been waiting for the report, so I'll just address a couple things. The first is the report. So it took 3 months for that, which didn't really address what we asked. We knew that the ones on Erie View didn't have permits because they were existing homes. Like a lot of things in this community, they just go ahead and do whatever they want. But I did put in newer construction driveways that were supposed to have permits. And those driveways were the same size when they built the house as when they moved in the house, as when they got the finals. So, and because I talked to a few of the owners themselves. So, and no one said nothing to them. So technically those driveways have been allowed to stand, even though they don't meet the development standard. And I sent the counselors like 7 or 8 more on top of those. And I felt that was enough because you've got 10 examples of it already. It's mostly in Ward 3 and 4, I believe. But they're all over the place. I could have sent 12 more on top of that, all homes constructed in the last few years. So those are technical allowances, whether you want to or not. Legally, you can't make them change it now because they had their permits, they got their finals, they got their deposits back. So, and that brings me on to my other point, exceptions, the idea of exceptions. So council has approved a double driveway, made an exception for somebody. But as far as I know, looking at agendas, I haven't seen anyone else coming in requesting double driveways. So the idea that because you give one exception, you're going to have to give everybody an exception is false logic. Because it doesn't happen. Because if that was the case, since other driveways were allowed, I would be allowed it automatically. With administration, I wouldn't have to be here. So this idea that you give one exception, you give everybody an exception is just not true. They don't do it. It's mostly case by case anyways. So, or at least it should be. As far as the pictures that I see in the agenda with my name on it, which I thought was not allowed in here, or at least that's what I was told. I don't really have nothing to say. It's a construction site. The bin is partially on the easement. The trusses are partially on the easement. Big deal. Go to other construction sites. It's a lot worse. My personal van with my tools on a construction site working parallel to the road, like cars are supposed to be parked. What's the big deal? But what I do see there is a Sea-Doo and a boat on my side of the road, which is against your bylaws. But that's okay, right? So other than that, that's all I really have to say. I've spoken a lot with the counselors about what goes on in this community, about double standards, about hypocrisy. And if we want to have accountability and we want to have standards, we want to meet them, and we want to show the community that if you follow those standards, it's a good thing. But if you break those standards, it's a bad thing. Well, this would not be going about it the right way, in my opinion. And that's it.
Mr. Abbott?
I'd like to ask if I could have a couple extra minutes, if possible, just to read all this.
Sure, keep going and then we'll see how we go, okay?
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Okay. Okay, town council members and Essex administration, we understand that the owner of 384 Erie View Ave, Harrow, has come to council and hopes to have a wider driveway. I feel that I should reach out to you regarding this, as I have a much different opinion as well as others in our neighborhood, and would like to have you see our concerns as well. I feel this sets a bad precedence on our beach road. Every beach is unique, and granting a 40-foot driveway is not simple on this beach itself. The owner of 384 Erie View has come to council comparing other driveways to his own. The driveways he is comparing his own to not take away from town-owned public parking, which residents rely on. His 25-foot is cutting through town property on the road that was designed to have an offset shoulder approximately 5 feet on one side, which is the south side of the road, and approximately 30 feet on the north side to allow public parking spaces on the north side of the road for beach residents. Additionally, None of the driveways currently in excess of 25 feet have been approved by the town, and they have just not been reported to the municipal bylaw office. By granting an exception in this town council meeting that will set a new precedent that this will be allowed everywhere, and that anyone is allowed to break this development standard. This design feature that was put in place when the beach road was developed, something the owner of 384 Erie View Ave would have known about before he even purchased the property. Residents have used this property to park since the houses were built on the south side of the road. This established apron for parking was in place from the development of Erie View Ave. This parking was intended from the start, and this is the reason the town of Essex has a development standard manual to protect parking spaces for all residents. The photo from the owner of 384 Erie View Ave sent to town, in which he states, these photos show that what has been allowed, not addressed, overlooked, is truly false when the owner purchased the property. I immediately tried to contact and discuss the property and the driveway. The owner of 384 Erie View made no attempt to return my call or to come talk to him regarding the expected driveway. Basically, it was the owner himself that did not address the issue himself, unfortunately leading to the situation we are in. As you can see from our pictures dated September 22nd and October 26th, which was the date of the OPP incident regarding the driveway and the parking, you can see the owner of 384 Erie View Ave has contractors' vehicles, trusses placed on the ground, a van parked sideways in front of his house, along with the owner's own personal vehicle along the entire length of town property. This makes it very unclear where he intended to make his driveway, as he had no discussion with any residents, or never had a clear marked driveway until the police had shown up, upon which Kevin Carter tentatively marked a 25-foot driveway that is clearly marked, would have solved all the issues and would have allowed the owner access to his garage without a call to the police. Pictures presented at the last council meeting showing vehicles across the whole driveway are very old. The Jeep in the picture was sold in April of 2022. There was no driveway marked by the owner. Therefore, the parking that was used for many years prior was continued. Since Kevin Carter came out and the driveway entrance was discussed, the entrance of 384 Erie View Ave Drive has been left clear from all vehicles. At the town council meeting December 19th, the owner of 384 Erie View Ave states there are still 1.5 vehicles in front of his garage or driveway. This statement is false. On top of this 25, that remains clear for the owner of 384 Erie View Ave to access his garage. The owner of 384 Erie View Ave has also placed an additional 40 feet approximately in length of pylons along the road to prevent people from using the town parking in front of his house. Together with the pylons and angled driveways, the owner of 384 Erie View Ave is taking away approximately 80 feet of town parking and is now asking council to allocate additional space on top of this. The driveway access of 384 Erie View Ave that is currently marked is cutting through town property at roughly a 30-degree angle. This turns this 25 feet into approximately 42 feet in total across the town property. The owner of 384 Erie View Ave is now asking to have his driveway expanded to a width of 40 feet. Include that 30-degree angle, this would make up significantly much wider portion than 40 feet. If angled parking is allowed, what is stopping the owner of 384 Erie View Ave or any resident from stretching their driveway from corner to corner? I drove all the beach roads after the meeting in December. There are no other driveways on an angle through the town property. If the town allows this, it would be discriminatory to prevent all others in the future. The owner of 384 Erie View Ave should not be allowed to angle his driveway. He should have his driveway 90 degrees from the road. There is not a driveway in the town of Essex that does not come through the town property to meet the road at 90 degrees. This standard has been set for a reason and needs to be upheld. As per Town Council Bylaw 1799, the town prohibits removing or dumping topsoil on town property. Clearly from the photos from September and October, you can see the ground in front of the property was dry and had a thick gravel base, which appears in additional photos. His parking is clear he had this topsoil and personal reasons in which he created soft layers to keep people from parking in front of his house. It seems he is hoping to make it appear approximately 80 feet in width and 30 feet in depth of town property are one of his own. This is a great amount of tax-free land on Lakeview property, something no other town residents are given for free. The area in front of 384 Erie View Ave gravel was removed and topsoil was added without a permit should be restored to the way it was
Okay.
previously with gravel.
Sorry, Mr. Abbott. I think you got most of it out.
I'm done.
Thank you. And because you only came to council once, we did give you an extra minute. So thank you. So we'll go to Director Gerard now to give the highs and lows of his report.
Thank you. Through the mayor. So the report was prepared, which does describe that there is a development standard regulation in place that driveways should not exceed 25 feet in width. In this circumstance at 384 Erie View, there is an open driveway permit, which is required to meet the development standards. In our meeting in December, council requested that administration review the permits in the area and driveway widths within the area. After thorough review, we did review both open and closed permits, and no permits were issued for driveways in excess of 25 feet. Based on the development standard manual and the open driveway permit, in order for the town to be objective and transparent, we recommend that council uphold the development standards manual, which was approved by council in February of 2022.
Gerard, now we will go to members of council. Members of council, you can ask delegates questions, or you can ask administration questions. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's a council there. This question's for Director Gerard. Based on some of the emails I read today, is it my understanding that parallel parking is required along that road and along most roads in our township?
Through the mayor, our parking bylaw, which is bylaw 224, does specify that vehicles do have to park in the direction of traffic. So along the side of the road and in the direction of traffic, that is enforceable by the OP.
Madam Mayor, so I think that solves a good portion of the problem we're dealing with here. If we're parking parallel to the road, I think that is a big correction that we're going to have that would solve a lot of the issues that we're having. And I understand completely that you guys have parked there for years like that, and that's the way it's been. There was no house there for years. There is now. I notice you're not parking in your other neighbors' front lawns. I sympathize with the loss of parking that you're going to suffer, but I mean, for me, I think the parallel parking is important, and it's an important note that we enforce from this point forward. Hopefully by some signs, maybe if need be, but that would be a big step in the right direction. I mean, and again, I was out to your place and you guys had a boat parked there. I've seen you've replaced the big boat with a smaller boat that should be 25 feet inside your property line. Even in your own pictures, I understand that's your Sea-Doo that's in the pictures that's parked where it shouldn't be. And so, I mean, I think we could all work together and park parallel to the road, and we could probably solve a lot of these issues, right? And not have to be in front of council right now, hopefully.
Thanks. Through you, Madam Mayor. Good comments, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for those for sure. But I'm really uncomfortable because we're right where a council or a municipal council should not be, and that's with a neighbor's dispute is how I feel. And that's why I'm grateful we do have property standard manuals and policies that are put in place by us and prior to us, so that we have guidelines to follow. I do have a question for our manager, Jabor, just because of a comment that one of our delegates, Mr. Gomes, made when because it keeps coming up about how we grant the request to make his driveway wider than our development standards allows, that we're going to be setting precedent, and he doesn't see a lot of requests on our agendas for this to happen. We've had some, but he is correct. We don't. But my assumption was that we aren't seeing these requests because you're managing them at the planning department before they ever come to us, when you're saying this is our property standards manual and this is, and it dies there, or is it just not a lot of, like, he suggested that we're going to be bombarded, or we could be by precedent that we won't be bombarded by more requests. You know what? I'm sorry, I'm not being clear. I don't think that we're going to see a difference in the request coming forward because my guess is that they're being shut down at planning.
Through you, Ms. Mayor. So planning simply looks at private property boundaries. We don't look at anything in the municipal right of way. So those types of requests would be sent to infrastructure. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Through the mayor. So, Mr. Brewer is correct that, so the permit is taken at the time of building permit for the driveway in the right of way. When it is a requirement of that permit that prior to, the issuance of the permit that the driveway be approved by the municipality. So we did consult with Mr. Gomes as, with our Public Works Department, and they, told Mr. Gomes that the driveway had to be 25 feet. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. My thoughts were just, it's being suggested that, we're setting a precedent and we're going to start, having, more requests for this. And I don't see how. If we allow it, are we at risk that we're going to be having these come in front of us every month now? If we allow the 40-foot exception?
We don't typically get many requests for driveways in excess of the 25 feet. Typically, when we notify residents that the requirement is that it should not exceed 25 feet, they typically install it. There are circumstances that, we do have people that request it, but they ultimately, in the 3 years that I've been here, never have come to council asking for an exception in the last 3 years. There is an obvious, when an exception is provided by council, there is an obvious chance that it is precedent setting and that we could receive more requests, but that would just be, speculation at this point.
Counselor McGuire Blaze, then Counselor Allard.
Thank you through the chair. I just want to say that this is not a neighborhood, it has become a neighborhood dispute, but it should never have come to this. This is about a driveway and nothing more than that. This is about, are we going to allow Mr. Gomes to have a larger driveway or not? Mr. Gerard, can you explain to us again, just remind us why we put a 25-foot driveway rule in place, please?
The reason that we regulate driveways is mostly to provide consistency across the entire municipality and to remain transparent and objective. Essentially, a couple of reasons in addition to that is to reduce hard surfacing. So there is a big push in municipalities to reduce the amount of hard surfacing that is provided within road right of ways and private property. That's mostly because of climate change and how much rainwater we receive. Impervious surfaces such as driveways, concrete, houses, increase the amount of water that goes directly into storm sewers and ditches. The other is for consistency for infrastructure replacement. So whenever infrastructure needs to be replaced within a neighborhood, we have to ensure that we're replacing those driveways and everyone's property back to the way that it was. Driveways are a large expense to the municipality when we have to replace water mains, storm sewers, sanitary sewers, and regulating the size, the thickness, and the design overall of those things help keep our capital budgets more stable. And they help to ensure that everybody receives the same consistent product when the capital project's completed. And the other one is to allow for parking on roadways. If we allowed everybody to hard surface their entire front of their property with driveways, there would be no road parking. So that is another reason that we do that.
Follow up, Counselor McGuire Blaze.
Thank you through the chair. So 2 questions. One, in Mr. Gomes' neighborhood, actually directly across the street, there is a situation where the neighbor cemented his entire backyard to create a ginormous parking space. am assuming he did not get a permit for that. So can you confirm that that was not, he did not get a permit for that? And two, are there any sewer, or are there any utilities under the right of way on Mr. Gomes's side of the road? Sorry, thank you.
Through the mayor, so there are utilities in the right of way. On the north side of the property is the water main. There's a 6-inch water main that provides municipal drinking water to that neighborhood. As indicated, and then for your other question, as indicated in the report, we did review all of our records and there were no permits issued for driveways in excess of 25 feet in that neighborhood.
Are you, anything further, Councillor McGuire, please? Okay. Councillor Allard, then Councillor Garron.
Chair, I have two questions for Kevin, I guess it would be. The first question, what is the minimum width a property can be in the town of Essex? Any idea?
That question is better directed at our planning team, so I will pass it back.
Chadwick?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Allard. So the question is actually, the response rather is specific to a zoning district. So there is no minimum that is, say, a blanket minimum across the entire municipality. It is dependent on the zoning district. In a typical R1 zoning district, the minimum lot area and lot width would be 5,000 square feet and 50 feet in width. It varies by district.
I guess I don't want to see a small house with a humongous driveway and a small piece of lot beside it just to fit it in. I know Mr. Abbott has no parking. Is there a reason why there's no parking on your side of the road?
The question, please go back to the mic. Sorry, I know. You get your exercise tonight.
On our side of the road, the property line is literally 5 feet from the edge of the road. And on the other side of that, I have my weeping bed. So I really don't have, even to parallel park, I'm gonna be still on the road to parallel park. So I really have nowhere to park. So it's, or
Anything further, Councillor Allard?
I want to say to Mr. Gomes, I feel for you. I have battled with this for many days. And I don't know where council is going to go with it. I don't want a community war. I want you guys just to settle down and keep you clear of each other.
Just to speak to the 25-foot driveway, my understanding is that it's basically from the curb, if there was a curb, to the property line that goes into the resident's property. So that property line. From there, correct me if I'm wrong, administration, but they can expand the driveway if they wish greater than that.
Private property, the municipality does not regulate driveways.
So yes.
Correct.
And we are here to talk about Mr. Gomes' situation, but I guess the problem is that I've been dealing with since the get-go has been, what seems to be rules for some and rules for others. It's the big elephant in the room. Why we don't get people approaching us for 25 foot or greater than 25 foot is likely because they know either they can't get it, or B, they're just going to do it anyways. Or maybe they bought the property and it was already there and they didn't know it was illegal. At the end of the day, it's really not what we're here to address. But on that note, I mean, by way of permit, we've already been told that we've made no exceptions for any resident in our town for a greater than 25-foot driveway. We have a development standards policy. So the question I have for administration is, if a resident was to come forward and complain about a possible illegal driveway in our town, can our town enforce removal of that unlawful driveway?
Yes, the answer is yes. If the town receives a formal complaint from a resident of a driveway that does not meet the town's development standards manual, we do have the right and authority to order it removed or remove it at the expense of the property owner.
Okay, so now further that, so my last question, I guess, would be to Mr. Gomes. When I'm looking at these type of requests, we're looking for some sort of hardship. A reason why we would need to allow for that allowance for you. If you can just tell us one more time what the actual hardship is you have and why the driveway has to be greater from that curb to that property line than 25 feet.
Question, you have to go to the mic. Sorry.
Variety of reasons. I have a 196.5 feet of side yard. I have a 30-foot wide garage. I have multiple vehicles that I don't park on my property yet because I don't want to be cars in and out. I have a trailer. I have a skid steer that I'd like to park on my property. And I want, because of the road, the way it's situated, I don't want to be tractor trailing it in every day. And like I said, no one's addressing the elephant in the room. What about the other ones with permits that are bigger?
Have Counselor Mady, then Counselor Hammond.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. So I guess I got a couple of them. First, the report only looked at permits around that address, right? Not the entire town. Through you, Madam Mayor. I believe our first term of council, we allowed somebody to have 2 driveways on their lot, effectively giving them a 50-foot hard surface. And we weren't over inundated from people asking for more either then, right? So we don't have to worry about that so much. The question of the driveway, and I guess I should stop right here and say thank you to Mr. Gomes and thank you to Mr. Abbott, because this touches on 4 or 5 problems that we have out in the beaches that need to get cleaned up. So thank you very much for bringing us out here and letting us have some conversations about it. So the driveway, when it comes down on an angle now at Mr. Gomes' property line, that's going to have to get straightened out and run perpendicular to the road by our property standards. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, we are willing to work with permit holders. If the driveway were to be on an angle that is that is appropriate, we have the ability to do that. However, we do not allow the driveway to be in excess of the 25 feet wide. So the option is there to make it angled or perpendicular, but it is required to be 25 feet or less.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. So there was a picture that I had, and I sent it to the rest of the council from Mr. Gomes. On his plan, he showed a 30-foot angle driveway all the way down to the road that was never corrected. So that should have been necked down to 25 feet then on the same angle for it to be okay.
So I've seen that drawing. That drawing was submitted as part of a building permit. And as I mentioned previously, at the time of building permit, only private property is looked at by the building department for that purpose. The driveway is addressed through a driveway permit, which is pulled at the exact same time. That sketch was not attached for the driveway permit. It was attached for the permit for, I believe, either the accessory structure or the dwelling.
Thank you, and it's you, Madam Mayor. Okay, so maybe going forward, it'll be a little less confusing if we notice that there's a problem that we could flag it out to the homeowners. Now, as far as the fill problem, the town is actually looking to have grass brought up to the road's edge, if I'm not mistaken, our last, bylaw, that's what we were looking to do, right?
Maybe you're referring to the landscape bylaw
Yeah,
the proposed.
yeah.
Mayor, I believe I know what you're speaking of. So you're talking about the permitting policy that, or bylaw that was brought, the protection of highways bylaw. Yeah, the proposed, which only received 2 readings, which was not approved by council, did suggest that grass be brought to the road. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's right to the edge of the road, but the travel portion of roadway, which could include, a curb or a shoulder or the edge of the pavement. So it's not exactly directly up to the road, but you are correct, grass in the boulevard.
Heard anything further, Councillor Mady?
Thank you. And yeah, I guess the last thing I want to add right now, is, 40 feet might have been too much of an ask. Would Mr. Gomes be willing to take a little bit less if we wanted to amend that maybe to a 35 foot so that you had enough room for your garage? Is that something that we can do?
So Councillor Mady's floating ideas. I have the deputy mayor and I have Councillor Verbeek, and we're looking for direction from council on whether we're going to receive the report, deny the request, or make amendments. Deputy Mayor?
Mayor, Councillor Mady actually asked the question about if he was willing to accept less than the 40 foot, because I wasn't inclined to go 40 feet myself. So thanks for that question. He answered it.
To you, Madam Mayor, since we're kind of throwing around ideas before we throw any amendments out there, I'm just wondering if administration would be able to comment on the possibility of allowing Mr. Gomez to have the angle with the 25 feet maximum width. And then once he hits his property line, he can make it 50 feet wide if he wants up to the garage. But at the roadway, if he's only allowed the 25 feet from the road, then, I mean, is that staying within our property standards manual? And also, while I have the mic, I would be remiss if I failed to mention my time on the Climate Adaptation Plan Committee. This did come up about the hard surfaces, as Director Gerard pointed out. And one of the recommendations is to avoid hard surfaces where we can, but specifically close to our waterfront, our lakefronts. And you jarred my memory when you mentioned that.
At some point, we will look for a motion. So I think the CAO wants to speak. CAO speak.
Mayor Bonnie, just kind of caution council in terms of the conversation going here. And Councillor Mady, I know you're going direct to the delegate, but that should actually go through administration to get some feedback, right? Just for proper protocol and all that. Just we're not negotiating right here at this point.
All right.
From council. Councillor Verbeek.
Can we get a comment from administration on perhaps allowing the angle with maintaining the 25 feet, and he can widen it as soon as he hits his property line? Administration's comments on that, please.
Yes, that would be permitted. So 25 feet through the right of way is permitted. The driveway width is not regulated by the municipality. So if he wanted to make it 50 feet on his own private property, he could do that.
Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Make the motion that we approve Mr. Gomes' driveway up to, I would say 35 feet. And I don't know if we can add in no parking or parallel parking signs out there, but I think it would be helpful. I think it'll solve, actually 30 feet was what I spoke too soon. 30 feet was where I was going with that. And that would be what my motion would be. 30, sorry.
The Mayor has a motion, 35 feet, 30, sorry, geez, sorry. 30 feet, and is that, would that be on the angle then? Okay.
The road has a slight angle to it, so to match the angle of the road, so it'd be correct.
The CAO suite,
Just to our acting clerk for a point of order, I believe we currently have a motion on that would have to be dealt first before that. No?
seconding that motion?
Motion.
Okay, before we go further, we need a seconder for this motion for discussion. Counselor Meady. Okay, and then we'll go Counselor Allard.
The question I have is, are we changing this for across the standard, across the board, or are we changing it for one person?
Leave Counselor Allard that it would be site specific. I'll go to Director Gerard.
I do just want to point out that the report does have a motion. The motion is to receive the report, but also to reject the request for 384 Erie View Avenue to construct their driveway apron in excess of 25 feet that is specified in the current development standards manual.
To the motion, Counselor Garren.
Would that not mean that we deal with the first motion? And then if the deputy mayor wants to add a new motion after we deal with it, or what are we talking about here?
Brown.
So through you, Madam Mayor, so there is no motion on the floor. The motions that are, the motions that are in your agenda are for presentment only. They're recommended actions based on the reports to council. There was no mover and seconder on those, so there was therefore no motion on the floor. The only motion on the floor right now is moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, seconded by Councillor Meady, is to approve the driveway of up to 30 feet width angled in line with the road.
I still don't understand that. I'm sorry, but it's unfinished business. And the ask is for council to do further delegation. Request for 25 feet. I still think we have to deal with that.
I agree. I think although acting clerk, the current motion was made, I think we may have missed a step and should have received and dealt with the mission on the direct report from administration.
Madam Mayor, to CO Suite, he is correct. However, that motion was not ever introduced. So what I would recommend is that, well, what we're going to have to do is deal with the motion that's on the floor right now and then circle back to those proposed motion or recommended actions that are within your agenda.
Mayor Shepley.
Madam Mayor, in order to keep things in line, I'll withdraw my motion for now and reintroduce it after.
Okay, motion is withdrawn. Counselor Meady for now. You okay with it?
To you, Madam Mayor, motion's on the floor. We gotta deal with it. We should have had our report go first. 10.1 should have been the first thing that we dealt with then. But we've had our delegation speak. We've come to this point now. We have a motion on the floor. We should deal with business.
Mayor Bondi, to Councillor Meady, that is what happened. Delegations, and when Director Gerard spoke, that was to his report. That's what he spoke to, was 10.1.
Thank you, and through you, but first was our delegations dealing with the unfinished business, right? At 9.1.
That motion we did not bring back. So because we didn't bring back, if there's another motion that could potentially be more suitable, council is at liberty to bring that up, which is why I think we accepted the motion. But in lieu of the heated discussion, the deputy mayor is, he'd like to withdraw his motion so we can debate the other motion. I'm sorry, guys. I know.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I'll honor.
Okay. So now Which one?
Yeah, both of these, so they're just.
Okay, so we'll go to this motion and then we'll see if this motion passes and then we'll go to a new motion. That the operations report 2023 be received and that council deny the request for 384 Erie View Avenue to construct their driveway apron in excess of 25 feet that is specified in the current development standards. So looking for a mover and a seconder to support this motion. Deputy Mayor Shepley, did you support that? Or move it? Okay. And Councilor Verbeek seconded it. Deputy Mayor Shepley, you had an amendment? Okay, so we have the motion on the agenda in front of us now for a vote. Or discussion. Any discussion to the motion? We kind of already did. Okay. All in favor of this motion to deny the request? And that is a 4. So that a motion fails. We're looking for another motion from the council. Deputy Mayor Shepley?
Motion that we allow Mr. Gomes his 30-foot driveway matching the road angle. Thank you.
Looking for a seconder for that motion. Councilor Mady. Comments to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is great debate, great conversation. Love it. Thank you, Mr. Gomes, for coming to us and asking for us and forcing this debate once again. That's kind of showing that we want the residents to come to us when they want to build these bigger driveways, not just do it, not just be another rule breaker. So thank you for that and showing that we can have a democratic process here and achieve some great things. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
Deputy Mayor Shepley is last motion, so
Again, through you, Madam Mayor, I make the motion and I came in thinking I was going to go 35 feet, but I believe with the parallel parking being clarified today so that we understand that, I don't believe you need 35 feet. I don't believe you need 40 feet. I think 30 feet is more than adequate and solves the issue at hand. And I think that we've dealt with this and I think this is a very amicable solution. And I think it's warranted in this situation. Thank you. I hope everybody supports it.
A point of clarification, is it going to be a maximum width through the right of way of 30 feet? Okay, thank you.
everybody is familiar with the motion. I personally wanted to see it as a 90-degree, 30 feet, so I won't be supporting the motion, but sorry. All in favor of this motion? That is 4. And that fails. Any more motions? Councilor Verbeek.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I was going to make a request that maybe we make that same motion and take the angle out at this time.
Brown, you have that motion that we have a 30-foot at a 90-degree. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, seconded by Councilor Verbeek. Yep.
I just want to make sure that I have this understood so that you're approving up to a maximum his driveway of 30 feet with, approve the driveway width up to a maximum width of 30 feet through the right of way at a 90-degree angle to the road. Thank you.
This motion, council. Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, the 30 feet at 90. That's 6. Opposed? 6-2. Okay, that motion carried. 30 feet at 90. It's a compromise. Okay, moving on to public presentations. Walter Branco, President of Noah Homes. regarding the fence requirement for Noah Homes Parkland subdivision. Looking for a mover that Walter Branco be permitted, I don't know, I think he gets to talk first, right? Yeah. Okay. Walter, if you want to go back to the mic, we'd love to hear you talk about your next development or your other, I guess your other development.
Yeah, so before I start, I just wanted to let council know that I deal in a lot of different municipalities, and you guys are very gifted to have an administration and a team like you have. So I don't want you guys to take it for granted, and just want you to realize and appreciate that. So Parkland Woods development has been a development that we working on for quite a few years, and we had some issues with groundwater in that location. So some of our grades of our properties ended up coming up higher, and we rather than putting in a tampered altered grade walkout, we our clients wanted a level rear yard, so we put in a retaining wall, a decorative retaining wall that faces the park, the town-owned park at our cost. At the time, some of the height of the wall areas were above or at that gray area of the 1 meter, which obviously as a building code requirement would be necessary to put a railing. However, after all the grading and all the works were done, it concluded that a fence or railing was not necessary for building code requirements. However, due to some of the neighboring properties backing onto existing baseball diamonds, it's common that some of the spectators at baseball night will just plop and sit on the retaining wall and enjoy the game that they're watching. That directly impacts two of the residents, I believe, lot number directly, lot 20 and 19. And so it's come up that would it be a good idea to have a retaining slash iron fencing wall, iron fencing. And so we have reached out to the neighbors, and lot 21, they do not want it. They just spent $6,000 apparently on their own shrubbery, and they don't directly back onto the park, baseball diamond park area. So there's no spectators or no diamonds directly in their rear yard. However, the other properties, so lot 20, 19, and 18, we own lot 18, and we're more than happy to contribute to this our wrought iron fence and the neighboring properties to the lot 20 and lot 18 are also in the. So I'd ask council tonight if being neighbors, our development neighbors, town property, if they would consider paying for half of this wrought iron fence, I'd be more than happy to pay my 50%. Although two of our residents already reside there, but I just feel obligated as a builder. I would want to pay their share, their 50% of it, if council's in agreement to it. And again, and I know it would take away from some of the spectators sitting on this retaining wall, and so there would be a benefit for sure of that, and obviously any safety issues that could be. Thank you.
Subdivision you have there, and I will say that my kids never go on that wall when they're watching baseball. So I know exactly why you're here. Any comments? Councillor McGuire Blaze?
Thank you through the chair. Do we have an estimated cost on the cost of half of a wrought iron fence?
Our contractor quoted us between $62 to $64 per foot. So basically, the three properties that we're discussing, lot 20, 19 and 18, that directly back onto the baseball facility would be approximately 240 feet in length. There is lot 21, which is in the report. However, it doesn't directly back onto a baseball diamond, and Mr. and Mrs. Prince, the homeowners, have just spent quite a large amount in their own personal landscaping and prefer not to have a obstruction in their view. They feel that they're happy with the shrubbery that they've already planted there, and they wouldn't, no benefit to them to have it on lot 21. But yeah, so approximately 240 feet would be for the three properties.
No, any further questions from members of council? Councilor Verbeek?
You, Madam Mayor, who's requesting that this fence be put up?
For you, Ms. Mayor, administration is requesting that the fence be put up.
Councilor Verbeek?
And administration is suggesting that we partner for half?
For you, Ms. Mayor, no, the suggestion is that the financial responsibility be borne by the owner and the developer. The owner is the developer.
So, Mr. Boer's report is what we'll discuss next after we get a mover and seconder for this presentation. But in that, you'll see the recommendation has nothing to do with cost. If council is going to consider cost sharing, my recommendation is to deal with Mr. Boer's report, get a cost, and then we'd have to bring back that to council to see if there's any funding. Because right now, we're recommending that it's right at the developer's cost. That we do not cost share, it's at the developer. That's his request today.
Councilor McGuire Blaze?
One more question through the chair. To administration, I'm not, maybe Jake. Most of our parks have a fence around them already, which is municipal fencing, I assume. Does this park in particular have its own fencing, and is it mandatory? Is it part of our bylaw that says we put fencing up around our public property?
Through you, Mayor Bondi, no, we don't have anything that says we have to have a fence around parks. There is no fencing. Well, there is some fencing along the back of the Harrowwood area, which delineates the property lines from private property to public property. So that is part of the reason why we had that fence as the ask. And another part of the reason is because, as mentioned, it's to prevent people from sitting on there, but also to prevent kids from walking and jumping across the top of the walkways or across the top of the barricades, to prevent them from doing that. So that's the reason for the request for the fencing.
So if you go to your package, 10.2 is the report that speaks to this delegation. Councilor Mady?
To you, Madam Mayor. So first, thank you, Walter. I agree. Our administration's awesome. It's the best around. And thank you for doing such a great job. Even in my neighborhood, there was 3 homes built. I know a home was started last, but finished first, and it's one of the best ones in the block. So thank you. Now, that aside, I would make the motion that we accept the report, and then we can move on to Mr. Boers.
For a motion that the delegation be received. And can we do the report at the same time? No. Okay. Let's do the motion for the delegation first. Councilor Mady, Deputy Mayor Shepley, any further questions to the delegation? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, that is carried. And then we'll move on to planning 10.2, the amendment to the subdivision agreement. Looking for a motion there. Councilor Mady, supported by Councilor Hammond. Any further questions on the planning report? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Shepley?
Madam Mayor, isn't this where we get the explanation as to why this is being requested and from,
Further explanation? Sure. Ms. Jabour?
Through you, Ms. Mayor. So our planning report is actually asking for 2 amendments to the executed subdivision development agreement for phase 1 of Parkland Woods. For those that aren't familiar with the subdivision, it's located in the Harrow Primary Settlement area right next to Pollard Park. The first amendment that Mr. Branco alluded to is the requirement for a wrought iron fence. So that wasn't an initial condition of the subdivision development agreement when the subdivision was approved, because the grading design didn't necessitate it. Once the developer went to construct the services, grading changed because of the situation that Mr. Branco explained with the site. That necessitated the need for that retaining wall along those lots that back up onto Pollard Park. As Mr. Branco mentioned, the need for a fence is not a requirement for lots 18 to 21 under the Ontario Building Code, but administration is asking that council consider an amendment to the subdivision development agreement to require a 42-inch wrought iron fence along those lots for 2 reasons. One being for safety, because they are located so close to the baseball diamonds. People attending the park for events do sit on the retaining wall, which is private property owned by the owners of lots 18 to 21. They may walk on the fence, and of course, accidents may happen. So we want to protect the interests of lots 18 to 21, as well as the interests of the town of Essex should an accident happen. The other reason is for aesthetic purposes. We have a fence bylaw which dictates a number of styles that a person can build a fence to. So because these lots back up onto Pollard Park, we want an aesthetic, for aesthetic reasons, we want a consistent look. Hence the request for a 42-inch wrought iron fence along those lots. So 2 reasons for that. The second amendment actually concerns an already existing condition in the development agreement for those lots that back up onto Harrowwood. Those lots require a retaining wall that actually needs a fence under the Ontario Building Code. Under the subdivision development agreement, the developer is to put up a 6-foot wooden high privacy fence. Now that the retaining wall is required, a 6-foot fence on top of that would actually really impact the amenity of Harrowwood. So in consultation with Harrowwood, the resolution is that that fence height be reduced to 4 feet because it has to be on top of that retaining wall. So 2 amendments requested tonight for those reasons.
So I'm thinking that there's no real downside to the second amendment request, but the first amendment request is for council to support administration to amend an agreement that was previously made with the developer. But we're being asked to support this amendment without understanding what kind of money is involved. Like, I get that you said, you know, a price per square foot, but are we just going to go back on an agreement we made and ding the developer for $60,000 or like?
Ms. Mayor, the financial responsibility would be the developers. Had we known that retaining walls were required at the time of subdivision approval, this would have been a condition that we would have recommended to council to implement. We didn't know it was required at the time of draft plan approval, so we never recommended that condition. So we're back here asking for an amendment because of the changes to the grading.
Through the chair, I have 2 things. One, I don't understand how us as a town can mandate that he put in a wrought iron fence. We're not a condo corporation. Is that somewhere in our bylaws that says that it has to be a specific fence, or did we just pick the most expensive fence we could think of and say, okay, put that one up because it's our park and we want it to look the best? Every other park in this town has a chain link fence. Why not use a chain link fence, which is more cost affordable? Two, when they put up the retaining walls in Essex Center, sorry, I'm not familiar with the subdivision, but the one off Bryan Avenue in Hanlon in that corner, when those retaining walls went up, did we require them to put up a fence?
Director Gerard?
Or similar to the situation that occurred at Parkland, the subdivision you're speaking of is Jacana. Jacana subdivision also had a retaining wall that was installed after construction. It was something that was identified during building permit stage. So it's a very similar situation. The difference is that those properties all had existing fences along them because they were adjacent to an existing neighborhood, not a town-owned park, and facilities where the public go to utilize facilities.
Members of council? Oh, Deputy Mayor Shepley and then Councillor Verby.
Quick question, Mr. Moore. When this was it discovered as something that the builder did or the developer did that caused this to have to happen? Or was this something that we just missed and now we're coming back at change it? I'm kind of missing why this requirement just popped up out of nowhere. I mean, I'm sure it did out of nowhere, but did we miss it because we missed it, or did we miss it because they made a change?
We did not miss it. It was a change made.
I think that with any development, there comes along like unintended consequences. Walter can attest to the fact that it was really damp there. They had pumps running for a long time. So I think that when you start developing, you may not know what the soil conditions are after you start digging. I don't know. They say that Harrow is really swampy and really bad to build on. So, okay. Any further comments, Councillor Guerin?
Through you, Mayor. So, would the wrought iron fence question is a good question. Is it need to be wrought iron? Would the developer be less inclined to ask us for help on the fence if it was made of a different material?
Mr. Moore, suit.
Through you, Mayor Bondi. So the discussions came up about what type of fencing there was, and with brand new homes in the backyard of new residents, we didn't feel that it was necessarily appropriate to mandate a chain link fence in the back of their properties that would essentially be on top of their own properties. So that's why we went with the wrought iron look, mostly for aesthetics and appeal to the neighbors that would be living there at that time.
Councillor Guerin?
If I could, to the developer, would they be okay with a chain link fence?
Mr. Branco? Oh, yes, you got to go back to the mic though.
Because it's our community and our homes that are caliber of quality, we would want the wrought iron fence. It only makes sense. And there's a lot of people that are visiting that park and baseball and walking, and I think it's, it should be wrought iron.
Councillor Guerin?
So further that, then based on that, then that's more of what the contractor and the town would like to see, and probably what those residents like to see. Maybe with the angle taken here is looking at the two suggestions from administration and deciding whether we want the fence to go up or not. And then perhaps at that point in time, if we were to say, yes, we're going to go with administration's request, then maybe the developer come back to us another time with a request of helping him with costs. And maybe we can get costs for it. I don't think we can really deal with anything today that we didn't budget for and that we don't have any idea what's going to cost. But we can deal with the 2 points on the agenda, whether or not we want to follow suit with administration's request or not.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you. My question is, in the end, who's ultimately responsible for maintaining this fence? Mr. George?
I think ultimately the homeowners would be. right? When the town hands the subdivision over to the homeowners.
Yeah, sorry, I can speak to it if you like. Yeah, that's correct. It would typically any fencing that's installed as part of a development agreement would be deeded to the properties as well. And it would specify the type of fence that is required to be placed in that along that property line in the future.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it'd be my understanding, when I put a fence up at my property, I pay for it. Not that Mr. Branco should pay for it, but maybe the 3 property owners should chip in and pay for the wrought iron fence if they want that look. It is their property, and I don't think we should ask the taxpayers to chip in and pay for somebody's beautification of their property with a wrought iron fence. My personal opinion on that. So I hope that here's something with it.
We have
You, Madam Mayor. So just to check first, maybe a quick question to Walter. $60, sorry, $60 a foot, about 240 feet. Is that correct on the amount, the cost of the fence and the amount of fencing that's needed?
I think Mr. Boer is saying that she can answer it unless
Boer?
you want to get back to the mic.
Through you, Ms. Mayor, I quickly measured the frontage along Pollard Park, and it's 426 feet. That might help Mr. Branco.
If you wanted to speak, Walter, you have to go back to the microphone.
The quarter lot does not have a retaining wall. It would just be the 4 lots into the cul-de-sac, so approximately 351 feet. However, as I indicated earlier, the gentleman, the furthest north, Mr. Prince, he has already planted a hedgerow to create that separation, and he's not directly backing onto a diamond, and so he's not of any interest on wanting the iron fence. So if you took his property out, we'd be approximately 240 feet. Yeah, so approximately 240 feet. And so we're talking, to answer Councillor Guerin's question about dollars, you're looking at about a $12,000 to $14,000 cost. And so half of that would be, $6,000 to $7,000 each person. Kenny, one thing that could occur is that, and back to earlier Councillor Guerin's comment is maybe we could get a quote from our contractor. Mr. Gerard could, as representative from the municipality, compare the two, and then ultimately, I do know that our residents, we have 2 residents that are wanting to get their landscaping in and so on and so forth. And so they want a resolution on moving on, whether or not, because obviously, this has been ongoing for quite some time. And thank you.
Comments from a few council members. I want to wrap this up. So anything new, Councillor Verbeek, and then Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Question is to the clerk, can we, so rather than present this motion as presented, can we make an amendment to the piece regarding this wrought iron fence, the first amendment, can we amend that to read that council would contribute, that we would ask the developer to add the, add this fence, and we would grant the amendment to the planning department with $6,000 from our contingency fund, which, I mean, could we make that amendment to the motion?
Again, I would caution council, we do not have financial facts in front of us. To make a decision on that, I'd really recommend you do not do that. Couple things, the wrought iron fence is not even a factor until this motion is passed. Right? So I think you have to pass these two changes in amendment and then the Rod Aaron. And then if Mr. Branco would like to make that a formal recommendation in our time, then we can do research if that's council's direction. But to make that amendment now without financial information, I would not recommend that to council.
We have Deputy Mayor Shepley, and then Ms. Brown is going to read where we are.
So after listening to you speak there, Walter, I do have a question now. Now I'm even more confused. So we're gonna let one homeowner decide that I've got shrubbery, I don't need the fence, but we're gonna put it on the other ones and say they have to have it and you're gonna pay for it, or we're gonna cut in for half. I don't understand why it should be up to the individual homeowner what they put out there, whether they put a fence up, if they put shrubbery, rocks, it's their property. I don't understand why we're discussing us paying for it or Mr. Branco personally. If we're gonna allow the one to opt out because of their yard.
Ms. Brown, what motion do we have on the table right now, please?
For clarification, and so moved by Deputy Mayor Shepley, seconded by Councillor Verbeek. I just want to make sure that what you moved and seconded is in fact my understanding, so that the I'm sorry, I have the wrong one, sorry. Moved by Councillor Mady, sorry, seconded by Councillor Hammond, my apologies, that the report be received and that bylaw 2234 be read a first, second, third time and finally passed tonight. So that is my understanding of what was being proposed.
Okay. So council, that is the motion, and that was moved by Councillor Mady, supported by Councillor Hammond. Okay. There is one, everybody gets one last comment to the motion because we're going around in circles. Councillor Mady, do you want to wait till the end? Because you're the mover, if that's okay. Councillor Hammond?
To you, it's my understanding that the homeowners would ultimately pay for this in the long run. And it's only gonna affect their property value. I don't have a problem with a guy not wanting one. But then you gotta go and ask everybody else if they want one. It's hell in a handbasket here. If it's for safety reasons, then I think we should follow through with that and keep the town out of it, though.
Thank you. Karen. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
I'm not for it. I don't think it makes sense if we're gonna let somebody opt out, then it should be up to the individual homeowner at this stage, and that's where I'm at with it. I won't support it.
We're just gonna go all the way. We're just gonna go this way. Councillor Verbeek.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can only support the one amendment.
Councillor Allard.
Deputy Mayor Shepley, that you can't ask one and not ask them all, and you can't exempt one, not exempt the others.
McGuire Blaze.
The chair, is it possible, because I'm in agreement with Councillor Verbeek, to split the motion and accept one and not the other, or is?
Brown.
Madam Mayor, so as the motion is as it stands, so if you wanted to split that, this would have to be defeated and you have to reintroduce a new one and separate them.
Or Councillor Mady.
So first, it wasn't the homeowners that asked for this. Our administration asked for this, right? So the homeowners are kind of left out of, they shouldn't have to pay for it. It's us that are asking for it. So it becomes us and the developer. Second to that, not too long ago, we gave $30,000 for a sidewalk. We could afford $6,000 for a fence if it's going to be a little bit more beautiful. I would think that we should have a not to exceed limit, pass them both. And then if the not to exceed limit is too low for the developer, he could come back and ask for more money then. But then it allows everybody to move forward. That's what I was thinking. Thanks.
So Mady, I would prefer, I think that negotiating here in open session we just don't have our financials. I would prefer Mr. Branco to approach, say, the finance committee, once we have more details, perhaps our town staff put their feelers out, get quotes from companies that we know, try to get the best quotes on the table. I think our town staff are looking after the safety and the character of our neighborhood. So I will be supporting the motion and we'll see how it goes. So since we all spoke to this motion, we know the motion is as it reads in the report. So all in favor of the motion as it reads. And that is failed. Looking for a new motion. Councilor McGuire Blaze.
I just turned my microphone on. No, I will make the motion. Sorry. I will put the motion forward. Sorry, pardon, I don't have the motion up in front of me. Actually I do. That bylaw number 2234 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 1993, a bylaw to enter into subdivision agreement. Basically the second part of that motion, I'd like to put that on the floor.
Any questions to this particular motion? Ms. Brown?
So you're bringing this bylaw back here. Are you asking for amendments to this bylaw as it's written and proposed within this report or this agenda?
Through the chair, there's two parts to the previous motion that was just defeated. I want to remove the first portion that we are saying, I don't want there to be a mandatory fence put up on these properties. It should be up to the owner at their discretion. So I would like to remove that part of the motion and put in the second part of the motion where we are allowing a lower than 6-foot wood fence behind the nursing home.
I believe that you're talking about items, 1 and 2 within the bylaw, not the actual motion, because the motion that's okay. Just for clarity for those that are watching tonight and are here in attendance, the motion that's on this agenda is to receive or to read give this bylaw final passage tonight as presented. However, you are saying that on page, I believe it's 3 of the bylaw where it says now therefore that the section 1 under that section be removed and that only section 2 that says that clause 8 is deleted in its entirety in place with the following, and that talks about the wood fence, correct? Okay.
Seconder was Councillor Verbeek. Any questions to this particular motion that just talks to the fence at Harrowwood? Councillor Garin?
I'm lost. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I mean, why are we complicating this? I have no idea. So do we actually defeat a motion and we're asking for the same motion almost?
CEO Sweet.
You, Mayor Bondi, and maybe Mr. Boer can clarify, but from what I think the motion is that the original bylaw and that was to amend the agreement to have a fence in. You're asking us to do all the other steps, but just not to have that condition of the mandatory fence.
For you, Ms. Mayor, yes, again, just to clarify, bylaw number 2234, which is one of the recommendations is to adopt it. That contains 2 amendments to the established bylaw for Parkland Woods. The first amendment is to have the developer construct that 42-inch wrought iron fence along lots 18 to 21. The second part of that bylaw, paragraph 2, that proposes to amend an existing condition in the development agreement to reduce the required height of the fence between the lots facing Harrowwood from 6 feet to 4 feet. So that bylaw contains 2 amendments, and I'm hearing tonight that you may only want 1.
So my understanding is that bylaw 2234 that Manager Jabbour just explained was defeated. So Councillor Blaze McGuire made another motion that we adopt the second recommendation only. It was seconded by me, and I think we're nearing a vote. And I don't think everybody's opposed to the wrought iron. It's just there's not enough information right now about the cost and such.
Mayor. I mean, I can't support that. That's taking away the safety from our kids playing on the wall. The whole meat and potatoes was to have that fence up there for safety for our children playing in that park. And we're gonna leave that out. I can't support that at all. Thank you.
Yeah, and to Councilor Meady's point, the contractor is not disputing the fence. He's just saying you'd like us to help him with the cost of it, which we can't commit to tonight. I think the way that the motions were presented were fine. I don't think the contractor had a problem with it. I don't think the residents were gonna have a problem with it. And I don't think we should have had any problem with it.
Call the question on the one part of the fence with Harrowwood, and then we'll deal with the other part of the fence, okay? So all in favor of, yep, sorry. Ms. Brown,
Sorry, just for clarification, because what you're proposing here is what Councillor McGuire Blaze is proposing is that there, through this bylaw, this bylaw is being proposed, is being amended to remove item number 1, correct? Okay, just want to make sure that everybody's completely aware of that. Okay.
Item number 1 is the wrought iron fence. Okay, so let's deal with it piecemeal then, so we can make some headway. Okay. All in favor of item number, or the second part where we're dealing with just the fence at Harrowwood? Okay, so that is passed. Opposed? Okay, looking for a motion for direction. You know, we could have like a motion that administration work with Mr. Branco and, you know, get prices and, you know, if he feels appropriate, approach the finance committee. And then it can either be approved or denied, negotiated then. I do agree with you, Councillor Mady, that we need that fence there for the safety of our children. There's a reason why our administration are recommending that fence. And I feel that we would be in a liable situation if we didn't go forward with that. But I need a motion from council now.
I put forward them.
And through you, Madam Mayor, I would put forward the motion that we have the fence mandated and that we put if we're just talking about dollars and cents, let's put a not to exceed shared cost of like $15,000. We get the quotes, we get everything done. And if it's up to the builder, then if he wants more money, then he could come back. And if it's enough money for him, then we're done with it and it'll just be finished.
I need a seconder for that motion to even discuss it. Okay. Councillor Verbeek, you want to second that? Director Drusevich.
Through the chair. So administration is not in any situation right now to approve funding. So that is an exercise that we would have to go back and determine where we could present potential funding sources for something like that. I think that's where Mayor Bondi was referring to the finance committee, because it allows an agenda to be created, administration to come up with recommendations and potential solutions. We don't have that at our fingertips tonight.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. We'll have a few comments to the motion and then we'll vote on that motion because it might fail. Councillor Verbeek, Councillor Deputy Mayor Shepley, and then Councillor Mady. Let's keep it brief. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Through you, Madam Mayor, my issue isn't with having the fence. We can have the fence. I don't want taxpayers to pay for it. I don't think Mr. Branco should have to pay for it either, but if everybody thinks we need the fence and he thinks the fence, I'll vote for the fence. I just don't want taxpayers to pay for this fence.
Our original motions that we denied. Councillor Guerin. Councillor Verbeek, and then Councillor Mady, then Councillor Guerin.
Amendment to remove the not to exceed part of it then and just put forward the original motion. Thank you. That we go ahead mandating the fence and then let the developer come back to the finance committee at a later time.
Councillor Verbeek, you did second that. Did you want to remove your seconder or? Okay, so that's seconded now by Councillor. Okay, hang on, we got to pause.
Motion stands. If this friendly amendment is not agreeable to, by the seconder, then it's done. You don't, if the seconder, Counselor Mady has made a friendly amendment that the not to exceed portion of his motion be removed. And Counselor Verbeek as the seconder needs to okay that.
Okay, she did it. So Counselor Mady, do you have a new motion? Counselor Garen, save us. We need a new motion. I'll make a motion that I will make a motion that we approve the agreement to go forward with a wrought iron fence as per suggested by our administration. Let's try this one more time. Counselor Hammond seconds that motion. Does anybody want to speak to that motion? All in favor of that motion? We got 5. Okay, we got 5. Point 3. Okay, do we need a motion that we receive the report? Okay. Planning 10.3, draft plan of subdivision approval for 80 Maidstone Ave West. And looking for a mover that the planning report be received and that council approve a right-of-way admit a width of 5.24 meters, 50 feet for street A as indicated on the draft plan prepared by surveyors and dated February 21st for the residential development at 80 Maidstone Avenue West, and that council requests the manager of planning services for the County of Essex to give draft plan subdivision approval for Ontario Limited Development for 10 semi-detached dwelling lots, 5 townhome dwelling blocks on lands comprising of part lot 284 concession South Talbot Road, 80 Maidstone Avenue East, as proposed on the draft plan prepared by the land surveyors, and all of the conditions outlined below in the agenda items 1 through 9. Looking for a mover, Councillor Verbeek, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shepley, and comments to this report. We had some healthy conversations in our 5 to 6 o'clock meeting that you can view on our YouTube channel, and I think we discussed some drainage concerns from one of our delegations there. And if there's no further comments, Councillor, no further comments? Okay, Councillor Garen.
Through you, if you don't mind. I like all of it, but I do have some concerns about the existing neighbors. I'm just wondering, if we approve this going forward, if there's a way that perhaps the developer can work with those residents closely on things like drainage. Is there anything they can maybe do together? Maybe they can enter in some agreements outside of the town that will help, if they need rear yard drains, maybe it'd be the time when the developer's putting them in, that those yards that need them in the back, maybe they can enter an agreement with them and work on some cost sharing measures, if it's possible. Anything along those lines, or maybe even if there was an appetite for fencing, that they can work with the existing residents on fencing.
Walter spent his fencing budget in Harrow, but yeah, I know. I think Mr. Branco was talking. I think, did you guys have some conversations? I think we talked about a drainage and. Okay. Any questions to Walter specifically? Okay. If not, all in favor of the reports and all of the amendments, and that's carried unanimously. Congratulations. 10.4. Whoa, we've got a big one here now. 10.4. Essex Streetscape. And before we get a motion, we will go to Mr. Gerard, and Ms. Drusevich is here if we have questions as well.
Thank you. All right, so I'll take the floor here for a little bit through the mayor. So I am presenting the first little bit of slides, and then I'm actually going to pass it off to Director Drew to give me a hand too, so we'll be able to answer any of your questions afterwards. Next slide, please. So before you tonight on your agenda is the Essex Center Streetscape and Victoria Avenue Roadworks, as directed in December. We proceeded forward with that. So in this slide here, what we're showing you is what was approved in the 2022 approved capital budget. This was the original funding model for the entire streetscape, including Victoria Avenue. So you can see from the table in front of you that we were looking to fund from asset management lifecycle reserves in the ballpark of 130,000. The other reserve is our stormwater levy of 359,000. Contribute $1 million from our water reserve to cover water main replacement expenses. We have grant funding of $1,061,000, which makes which is a series of different funding from CCRF and the Red Grant, County of Essex portion for the roadway. And then we also have prior year funding from 2021 of $460,000. So this was actually a total of, and then the debt as well as $6,351,000 to take up the balance. So the total budget for the project was $9,360,000. What's important to note here is this budget and this funding model is exactly what was carried forward in 2023 as part of the capital budget, and that was approved by council. Next slide, please. So back in December 5th, 2023, which feels like a lifetime ago now, we presented 4 options to council. A couple of different models after our streetscape tender came in much higher than what we had approved for our budget. At that December 5th meeting, council proceeded with the recommendation from administration to proceed with option 3B, which is a reduced scope of the Essex Center streetscape and narrowing it down to a scope generally from Arthur Avenue to Cameron along Talbot Street, and then also including the Victoria Avenue roadworks for the entire length of Victoria from South Talbot Road to Talbot. Next slide, please. So this is just a diagram for councils, if you want to use it on your social media or you want to use it to facilitate discussions with residents. Here's a map for you that shows the scope that was identified as part of option 3B and was tendered in the most recent tender. Next slide, please. So what was approved in option 3B, when we prepared the estimate of the rescoping, we looked at our construction costs and engineering project management, and what we estimated, as a final to hit the bottom line, I should say. We were expecting this project as a rescoping to go over budget, our 9.36 million, by 424,000 approximately. What's important to note here is the pros and cons that were also developed as part of the recommendation. As you can see, there are a number of pros that were identified as part of the streetscaping plan, and one of the major ones being that completing the option 3B would help us to facilitate completing as much of the streetscaping theme as possible, also incorporating the Flex Street model, but also really pushing, which is our entire objective of the project, the economic development investment into the core of Essex. Next slide, please. So following the approval by council to proceed with canceling the previous tender and proceeding with the rescoping, we had 2 bidders on that project. So the total tender price, including non-refundable HST for JJ LaPera was just over $7.6 million. And the total tender price, including non-refundable HST for Nevin Construction was just over $8.9 million. So the lowest tender being J&J LaPera. What's important to note here is that there are a number of provisional items. Included in the provisional items, there was almost $2.3 million in provisional items included total tender in the tender. After review of those, the pricing and the needs of the municipality for this project, it was determined that those provisional items could be reduced down to $1,523,000, which would make the total award value to J&J LaPera of $9,149,219.21. Next slide, please. So a couple of key highlights from the report that I wanted to present to council. Included in this tender when we completed the rescoping, there was a Union Water main, water main asset that was identified on Victoria Avenue. This piece of infrastructure provides critical water conveyance to the Essex Water Tower. So we approached Union Water about replacing this water main in conjunction with the Victoria Avenue roadworks, and they were agreeable to proceed. Administration was agreeable to proceeding with the tendering of it and looking at the pricing. After talking to the Union Water administration, they are in agreement with the pricing in essence, and they will be taking the expenditure to the Union Water Board on April 19th. Also included in the tender, we also approached, as announced today, we have some serious fiber internet happening in Essex Center. So we approached telecommunication companies. So, not just the active ones installing in Essex, but anybody that may have future potential as well, to see if they wanted any infrastructure installed in the downtown core so that we wouldn't have to rip it up later. And we had some very strong interest in that. So we included some conduit and some infrastructure for telecommunication companies to install their fiber internet within. That total, which is fully recoverable, as well as Union Water, which is fully recoverable, is $108,649. The total project management and engineering costs, which include the detailed design, everything that's been completed up to date, including engineering inspection, maintenance period, services, are estimated to be $1,247,052.58. And it's also important to note that within the tender, the $9,149,000 change, that there is contingency and cash allowances in the total amount of just over $1.1 million. So contingencies and allowances are things that typically we utilize for unforeseen costs. I compare it to when you're renovating your kitchen, you may want to just replace the countertops, but once you rip out the countertops, you may find mold, or you might find something that you have to replace. We include contingency monies for things like that. So if we encounter contaminated soil, concrete, things that could be unforeseen that we couldn't anticipate during the tendering process, we include that money in it. So it is discretionary and only used to address those discretionary items. To date, it's important to note that the town has spent just over $720,000. This is monies that we've used for detailed design, geotechnical services, and all of those things that we use to facilitate the detailed design of a project. And then also that the town has secured $961,000 in grant funding that must be used towards the successful completion of the project. So you may note that our previous funding model noted over $1 million in grant funding. The reason for the decrease in the grant funding is because the county road portion of it, so what the County of Essex contributes towards the project, is depending on how much road you complete. Obviously, rescoping the project down to just the downtown core does lessen a little bit of the contribution towards the County of Essex. Next slide, please. So when looking at this in its entirety, the total expenses for the project is $10,396,271.79. And what this includes is the engineering and project management fees, the Talbot and Victoria construction costs, so the actual physical construction costs from J&J LaPera, and then also the Union Water and telecommunication infrastructure that is fully recoverable in the funding model. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the proposed funding model that administration is putting in front of council tonight. What it shows you is the budget amount that we have incorporated into the 2023 capital budget for the Essex Streetscape and what the proposed funding is. So what you'll note is that administration actually was able to fund a greater portion of the asset management lifecycle reserve portion, which was originally $129,000. And the rationale behind this is that Victoria Avenue roadworks are essentially an asset replacement. When we originally developed the funding model of the 129,000, that was only considering the Essex Center streetscape, which is essentially just a beautification and a streetscaping project and not necessarily an asset management project. But the inclusion of Victoria Avenue Roadworks allowed us to use funding from the asset management life cycle up to 50% of the total reconstruction value of Victoria, as we see that is an upgrade, and that's our current funding model for asset management. Our other reserve is funding the urban levy, which is urban stormwater levy, which is also the same thing. The actual cost for stormwater management up to 50% on Victoria. The water reserve is funding $1.3 million because the total cost for water main infrastructure to be placed along Talbot Street and Victoria Avenue is that value. So the water reserve will pay for, will fully recover what is the expense for water. The grant funding, as noted earlier, is $961,000. The prior year funding is fixed at $460,000. Which leaves a total debt of $6.2 million or $6,246,000 and change, which is actually, as you can note from the table, slightly lower than what was projected for the debt taking for the original budget of the Essex Center streetscape. Also noted in here, as you can see in the previous table, we included the Union Water expenses as well as the telecommunication contribution. This here shows that those are fully recoverable. So what appeared in our expenses item also appear within our proposed funding model. So it shows that it's fully recoverable. And again, our total project cost for the project is $10,396,271.79. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it over to Director Jurcevic.
Director Jurcevic.
Through the chair. So I'm just going to elaborate on a couple of points here on this slide as well. Director Gerard mentioned a few things, but I just want to elaborate on some of the analysis that finance did behind the scenes to ensure that the reserves were remaining at a sustainable level, even given the funding shifts. So the original project budget was developed nearly 3 years ago with the overarching principle that it was not due to asset management needs, but more so driven by economic development initiatives. So for that reason, as Director Gerard spoke, we limited the use of our asset management reserves, water reserves, or storm sewer reserves. However, we went through and did perform the analysis of what Victoria Avenue rehab looked like because it was considered an added-on project to the original project scope. So from this, it meant that the funding changes were required. And for the use of the asset management reserve, we looked at which portions we could fund, again, used the 50% threshold, and that equated to nearly $600,000. So because we are undergoing our 2022 audit, we were able to take a look at where the asset management reserve landed for 2022. The main source of revenue for the asset management reserve comes from the tipping fees that the municipality receives as being the host municipality for the landfill. So it was actually a record-breaking year in revenues received. So the revenue that we received into the asset management plan does not jeopardize the balance of the asset management plan due to that increase in tipping fees. So you will note in your 2023 approved budget document that we did forecast out the AMP reserve and what that would land at in 2027. And the addition of the $600,000 to be funded does not put that reserve at a balance lower than what's in your published document. I think that's important to note. As Dr. Gerard had said, we used the same philosophy for asset replacement, the 50%, when it came to storm sewer asset replacement, as well as water main asset replacement. And the debt had actually ended up being reduced because of these funding alignments. Next slide, please. So here, this is directly from the report, and what we are showing you is the thresholds that we used similar in your first report that you saw back in December. So we held consistent, and the first indicator that you are looking at is actually an indicator issued by the MMHA Ministry, Municipal Affairs and Housing. So every year the municipality gets a score on this. Typically, for the past 10 years or so, the municipality has fallen in the moderate range, which is 5 to 10%. So that means our total debt charges as a percentage of our net revenues is predicted at 8.14%. 2024, you will see an increase and another increase in 2026. This is just forecasted replacement that we would do through debt as well. So one of the most important indicators as well is shown above, and this is directly from the debt management policy that council approved in January. So the debt cap that council introduced through this policy is equal to 15%. So debt payments cannot exceed 15% of own source revenues. That's the threshold that we've given ourselves. The ministry says we can't do any more than 25%. So we still have a 10% buffer within that. So what you're seeing is out of that 15% that council has allowed, how much are we using? And you can see we are remaining under the 70% of that cap throughout the entire forecast years through to 2027. So there would still be capacity of approximately 30% of that cap that was dictated by council should any emergency needs arise. So what you're noting as well from 2022 to 2023 is a total debt increase of 3.4 million. This is due to the fact that we have some debt falling off, and we are also making some very significant principal payments in 2023. So the net impact isn't 6.3 million, it's more in the realm of 3.4 million. The total debt payment on an average annual basis is $578,076. This is over a 15-year term. Rates are obviously subject to change at the time that we debenture, but we used the current rate at Infrastructure Ontario. So the net impact of 2023 for debt payments would be approximately $278,000. We do have debt payments falling off in the realm of $300,000. So that's important to note as well. Next slide.
Questions from councillors? Councillor Guerin, then Deputy Mayor Shepley.
Well, first off, start by applauding administration for turning around this report in the manner you did. I mean, I can't believe how quick you were able to flip it. And I also applaud you for the outside the box strategizing to try to help us get to where we want to get to. So hats off to you. So a couple of questions on the debt impact slide that you just had up there. That doesn't take into consideration, or does it take into consideration any future projects that are kind of on our horizon?
Through the chair, it does. So we've incorporated in 2026 approximately $5 million of projects. We didn't slate it to any specific project, but we knew through the asset management plan we'd require additional funding. And we also know that one of the main assets up for consideration is the Fire Station 3 replacement. So we used $5 million.
Further that through the mayor. And then we do have the $1 million in contingency allowance that's in there that we put in on all tenders, I understand, that may or may not be used in its entirety. And the debt level is staying at a level where it's considered reasonable. And the long-term debt is projected over 15 years. Okay, so the difference then in the debt from a couple months ago to now is basically $104,000. It's like 6.25 to 6.35. That's really what we're dealing with right now. Because our reserves, I understand, we're finding more money in the reserves or okay to take from those reserves. So it's really just that debt we should be contemplating right now, right?
So what has happened is the request for debt has actually reduced. So what was proposed in December was a debt request of 6.3 million, but through funding realignments, this proposed funding model is only using 6.2 million in debt. So it's actually a reduction of 104,000 in debt.
I guess just a comment through you. I guess then based on what I'm seeing here, I'm going to continue to support the streetscape, the concept and the completion of it.
Mayor Shepley.
Madam Mayor, I think this is pretty fascinating that, we come in higher but have less debt. We borrowed from Peter to pay Paul. Our asset management, we're told continually is underfunded, but we're gonna pull more out of it. What effect will this have on our taxes in the next year? What's based on this, but like that, I know there's no effect this year, but for next year, there will be, will it be a 1%, 2%?
Chair, so now that we have concrete numbers, I'd hesitate to put any stamp on what that exact tax rate increase will be, right? So this council went through what a budget deliberation looks like, and there's many factors that needs to be included. So what we would propose is using assessment growth to cover this, and other sources where possible, so grant revenues. So it's up to council to find those other sources of revenue and present to residents a tax increase they feel is reasonable. So budget stabilization, you'll see in future, actually on tonight's agenda, the recommendation of administration to start building up a budget stabilization reserve, and it's for things like this. So you can help residents by stabilizing the tax rate increase, funding additional debt requirements where you need to until that assessment growth catches up. So it's something that, a 1% comes in around 165,000, right? We also learned that through our budget exercise, but there's a lot of other factors. So I'd hesitate to put a tax rate increase on it. It's up to council to determine what that looks like through budget deliberations.
Thank you for that, Director Gersovich. So for me, it's gone up, and my position hasn't changed from the last time. I can't support it. I appreciate all the hard work. I know we've spent most of our grant money just to date already. So we've only got 239,000 of our grant money left based on what I read in the thing. So I just can't support it. It's just too much for our taxpayers from my perspective.
Which one? Director Drusevich, and then I have Councillor Allard.
Through the chair, I just want to clarify one point. So the grant funding was not directed towards engineering costs, which are the only costs that have been incurred to date. So they are for specific initiatives, being the construction of the streetscape. So technically, if this goes through, no grant funding would be awarded if this does not go through. Thank you. Through the chair.
Councillor Maybe.
Chair, now you had said that the water main and the telecommunications amounts we'd be able to get that back. Is that through service fees?
Through the mayor. So it would be a direct agreement with those parties. So for Union Water, for instance, if they receive board approval to complete that expenditure, we would complete that on their behalf, utilizing the costing in our tender, and they would reimburse us the actual cost for that. And the same thing goes for the telecommunications infrastructure. We would work out a formal agreement with those telecommunication companies to pay their share, and that would be fully recoverable as well. If for any instance that either of those parties decided not to proceed with an agreement, that expenditure would just be dropped. So we would not replace that asset. There would be no expense to the municipality, but there would also be no funding. So it would essentially just drop off, and we wouldn't have to replace any of that or install anything.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last year in our budget, it looked like we spent $670,000 already in engineering. Do we take that away from the new $1.2 million? Or is $1.2 million on top of?
Through the mayor, the $1.25 million, like in and around that ballpark, includes the total engineering and project management fees for the entire project. So it would include that original $670,000.
Okay, I wholeheartedly support the project. I think we've done it in Harrow. There was some growing pains certainly with notifying businesses, but I think that we learned and will be more hands-on with the businesses, better signage. I know our staff are working hard to come up with a plan for that, and I'm here like 4 days a week, so I'm going to be walking up and down talking to everybody. I do want to thank our town staff for the great out of the box thinking that they've done with this report. it was easy to get behind because it's not just the Essex streetscape, it's also Victoria. And I think there's a lot of synergies when we have a contractor in the area doing two projects while they're here. And I worry that if we don't go forward, that Victoria could even be lost this year. So I'm hoping that that we can move forward, because I think that, we have to do it. Whether we do it this time or we do it in 4 or 5 years, the price is just going to keep going up. So, and then we are looking at older plans and the public consultation that this council, the previous council has put in this, the staff hours, like the time, we'd be walking away from a significant amount of staff time, public consultation, time and energy, and it would be kind of all for nothing. So I think that there's a lot more of the pros than the cons, and I'm comfortable, nobody likes debt, but I'm comfortable with the debt. Maybe we look at similar things to what our town staff have done in Harrow, constantly applied for grants, and then they went out there and got more grants for businesses, and they've just snowballed. And now we're getting more development like the Harrow Antique Store in Harrow, which I think is because of the investment that the town did. And some of our businesses, may struggle temporarily, but sometimes, we need to have this short-term pain for long-term gain. Any further comments? Councillor Meady?
Mayor, I can see where it's going. I can't support it. It's way too much money. But that being said, I also can read a room. The light standards that we have downtown right now, they're in pretty decent shape. Anything that is, if you turn left off Victoria and heading out towards Maidstone, all those light standards are in horrible shape. They're all rusty. They look horrible. When we do this project, can we move some of those standards over to those ones at a reasonable cost to at least make that look kind of decent when we do the streetscape?
So within the tender, those the poles are actually the poles that are downtown right now are actually not that old. They were replaced back in, I believe, 2015. Don't quote me on the date. But essentially we have included in our tender to refurbish those lights wherever needed. So the lights will actually, the standards that are downtown will remain. We do recognize that the light poles in the remaining part of the streetscape that was excluded from the scope are at their useful life. We know that they're in poor condition. It is something that we know now that we're not completing the full streetscape, something that we are noting that needs to be completed in your capital budgets. So we do recognize that those lights need some work.
My final comments, I guess, for me on this will be, I'm not going to support it. However, I want to be clear, I'm not against beautification. It's just the cost is just too great. We've had a tax increase this year. I want to see Victoria done. I think it needs to be done. This overwhelming number is just too hard for me to look at. And then I know I'm going to have to make this decision next year come tax budget time, and we're probably going to be looking at a tax increase again. I can't support it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Shepley, in all my years sitting here, prices for construction, they don't go down, right? They don't go down for projects like this, and we're learning this already. Like, this project was supposed to be done a couple of years ago, and then COVID hit, so it's gone up. So if we're going to do it, now is the time to do it, or it's just going to go up. And having them here to do Victoria at the same time is a big benefit. And I think that we're hung up on the word streetscape, but we need to include streetscape and Victoria. And Victoria is going to be like redesigned. It's going to be beautiful. And another thing we need to keep in mind is how many times are we going to put this project out to tender? That's staff time, that's construction companies. Sooner or later, these construction companies are not going to want to bid on work in Essex. So keep that in mind going forward, right? If we want to be fiscally responsible, we should have, tried to get it done sooner, but we couldn't. This has been a long time coming. And really, this shouldn't even be this council's decision because it was a prior council. So, Councillor Guerin, I'm looking for a motion actually too.
Yep. Okay. Through you. Yeah, just to piggyback on what the mayor was just saying, I don't look at it as an expense. I mean, I look at it as an investment for our downtown businesses. I look for investment for our residents. I look at it as a long-term 30-year deal we're doing here. And and we also, in 4 or 5 years up the road, we've already been told by administration that we're going to be looking at some significant infrastructure problems there, whether it be under the road or the road itself. So I still look at it as an investment myself, and I'll make the motion that we move forward with it.
Aaron, that we move forward with Capital Works and Asset Management Plan Essex Streetscape Option 3B Victoria Ave tender results, and that council award the tender to JJ LaPera, and that council approve the funding model as displayed in Table 4 of this report, and that council appoints Stantec Consulting Limited to provide engineering services. Deputy Mayor Shepley has asked for a recorded vote, and I do need a seconder. Councillor McGuire Blaze. And Ms. Brown, we do have a recorded vote, unless there are any further comments to the motion. Seeing none, we will take the vote. Thank you.
Moved by Counselor Guerin, seconded by Counselor McGuire Blaze, on the motion as stated by Mayor Bondi. Counselor Guerin, how do you vote?
Support.
Supports. Counselor Hammond, how do you vote? Mayor Bondi, how do you vote? Counselor Hammond and Mayor Bondi both support. Deputy Mayor Shepley, how do you vote? Deputy Mayor Shepley is opposed. Counselor Verbeek, how do you vote? Counselor Verbeek supports. Counselor Allard, how do you Allard, how do you vote?
I support.
Counselor Allard supports. Counselor McGuire Blaze, how do you vote? Support. McGuire Blaze supports. Counselor Mady, how do you vote?
Opposed.
Okay, Counselor Mady opposed. With a recorded vote of 6 in support and 2 opposed, the motion carries.
Taking that, and congratulations, council, and I'm excited to see it done, and thank you, administration, for your work on that file. 10.5 Economic Development 2023-04. Looking for a mover that we receive the Economic Development Report be received for information. Counselor Verbeek, supported by Deputy Mayor Shepley. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Drainage 10.6 Drainage 2020.301, appointment of a drainage engineer for rush drain improvement amendment. The council appoint Dillon Consulting under Section 78 of the Drainage Act to provide for a drainage report to encompass additional unforeseen items encountered during the ongoing rush drain projects. Looking for a mover, Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Counselor Mady. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Environmental Services, 10.7 Kimball Lumber Fire Hydrant Extension Agreement. Need a mover that the environmental service report be received and that council enter an agreement with Lloyd Kimball Building Supplies Limited in the form and manner provided for in the agreement attached here to as Schedule A in this report, and that bylaw 2235 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a municipal agreement be read first, second, and third time, finally passed on March 20th. Looking for a mover, Counselor McGuire Blaze, supported by Counselor Guerin. Any questions? Counselor Mady.
Question, just for my own curiosity. So we're gonna extend our hydrant into Kingsville territory. Is that what we're looking at doing?
Through the mayor, there's actually currently a water main on the Irontown line that is owned and operated by the town of Essex. What the agreement is to provide a fire hydrant lead, so essentially a fire hydrant service across the road into their property at their expense, cost, and maintenance.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried unanimously. 10.8, corporate services, town water and wastewater billing. I will, we'll go to Director Drusevich and then we'll get a motion after.
Thank you, through the chair. Stay with me, guys. I'm reading the room now. And I do have a couple of speaking points that I've developed just based on some of the public feedback that we've received over the course of today. So there were some comments that I want to address directly. I wasn't planning to, but I think it's important for the public to hear some of these comments. So town staff was directed by council to investigate the option of bringing the current billing function for water and wastewater utility in-house, or in other words, to be performed by town staff. This function is currently provided by the town, by ELK as a third party for the town. So ELK Energy Incorporated performs this function. This direction was provided after an influx of complaints on the process of adding outstanding bills to tax accounts for collection, as well as the large amount of write-offs that town administration noted from the years 2020 through to 2022. In your report, you'll see that that was noted at over $100,000 in lost monies. Throughout the past 6 months, town administration has performed this analysis. So it was not a short process. We did spend 6 months investigating software vendors, developing timelines, and preparing the report that you see tonight in front of you. So what the findings were was that this switch or transition to be performed in-house would result in many efficiencies, both monetary and non-monetary. In a quick summary, I'm not going to go through every pro and every con that was listed in the report, but potentially one of the biggest factors to be considered is that residents would see an increased level of service. So the town expects that they would have information readily available through immediate access to the water records, and the capacity would be there to perform more analysis on town accounts, such as reading high meter usage, potentially identifying stuck water meters, and things of that sort. The town would also note faster collection. Because currently what happens when a OEB regulated company performs collection is they have to, any monies that they get in has to be applied to hydro first. So what we're often seeing is that when somebody pays their bill, you have your hydro charge as a portion, and you have your water charge as a portion. If they're only paying a portion of the bill, it's getting applied to hydro first, leaving the water as outstanding. So the collection isn't happening as quickly as if we had it under the town roof. So one of the most important points, I think, for public consideration is that no rates will change as a result of this. So every 5 years, we have a financial model developed to us by an external consultant, Watson and Associates. We worked with them to ensure that that point was valid. And if anything, residents may, after year 6 of savings, realize a potential rate reduction based on this model alone. So it would mean a staffing change at the town. You'll see in the proposed report, the introduction of 3 staff positions. However, we are currently paying the staffing cost to the third-party provider as it is. So even on an annual basis with the new staff, the savings would equate to $100,000 approximately. With staff under town supervision, this means we have the ability to align our service standards. So right now we have no vision on call returns, anything of that sort. We would now be able to have vision on that, ensuring that our standards that we adhere to are met as well when it comes to that function. So ELK is 100% owned by the town, but this doesn't just mean a shift in operations. It's important to keep in mind that the town only sees income from ELK when a dividend is declared. So right now what happens is, if there's any savings in the water and wastewater division, it's held within ELK. Shifting this operation means that any savings is realized through water rates, which is how it should be. That would be the proper practice. So I've listed a lot of good things, but there will be some headaches throughout this experience should it get approved by council tonight. residents will see some changes. So rather than paying one bill, they would have two separate bills. They would have one bill for hydro and one bill for the water utility. However, what we realized through some of our demos is that the amount of information we'd be able to contain on the water bill would be highly useful. So right now, if you're a Town of Essex resident, you may note that we aren't able to show any graphics on water usage, and we really aren't able to provide any detail on the water usage. This is because of the requirements for hydro, right? Because they require so much detail, water detail has been limited because of it to make the bill fit on a 1 to 2 page document. So we'd be able to provide more data to the resident as well, which would help them in analyzing their data, their water usage. We would make sure that a large amount of notice was provided to residents before any transition happened. And there you'll see within the financial breakdown, an entire communication and media campaign is being considered for this. So just in conclusion, town administration understands this is not an overnight project. There's been extensive project planning that has ensued and will be continued should approval be granted tonight. The town will not go live until it is ready, hence the resolution in front of you. Town administration did consult with ELK to confirm timelines, and they requested sooner than later if approved. But again, we're only going to do so when town administration is ready and residents would be ready as well. We've consulted with neighboring municipalities as well to ensure the smoothest transition possible. So we have some comparators that in recent years has made this transition, and we can learn from mistakes they've made to hopefully avoid them. At the end of the day, this is good news for our residents. More focus will be able to be placed on their water and wastewater accounts with a less net cost. So at this point, I'd be happy to open the floor to any questions.
So only Hydro One customers currently have 2 bills. So it would be just the ELK customers that would get 2 bills. Okay. Councillor Hammond.
Mayor, Mr. Gertrude, can you have any estimate as to how long the transition would take?
Through the chair. So we are proposed because construction would have to take place at town hall as well. That obviously hinders some things are out of our control when it comes to construction, right? So pending everything moves smoothly, we have a goal date in mind of October 1st. This would have to be evaluated along the way. You'll see in the resolution, it says October 1st or date of final migration. Extensive testing is required. We want to make sure that this is done at a time that is not going to result in as limited impact as possible to the resident and town staff as well. So aiming for October, but we would provide progress reports to council as well.
Are you looking at 1 month billing or 3 month billing? I think LaSalle does 3 months.
Through the town, the billing timelines would remain the same. We can look at that further when it's in-house, but right now our main concern is getting the operation and having as minimal of an impact to residents as possible until that transition is 100% smooth and operational, for lack of better words. And then we would look at changing the billing cycles. That was actually one point that the town of Leamington encouraged. They decided to switch the billing cycles at the date of switch, and it resulted in potentially more headaches. And so we're trying to avoid anything like that.
Through you, Madam Mayor. With the town taking it over, have you guys considered all the meters we're gonna have to be installing and all the ones we're going to be changing out? There's a huge job there. I just have a couple questions and I'll turn it right back over to you. There's that. I do think this is a great idea. With the lost revenue alone, if we could stop that, that would be fantastic. That would probably pay for at least some of those employees that we're going to be hiring, and not. I think it's fantastic. I'm just concerned about the meters and that we'd be ready to hit the ground running for October to be able to not have any missteps with all the homes coming in the area and so on and so forth.
Chair. So any water meter installs are currently performed by town as it is, not ELK. So ELK is simply the coordinator for those installs, but they are performed by town staff. And so that would result in no change.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just thanks to Director Jurusevich and team. I know this has been a long and daunting task. And I, for one, am really grateful that we've gotten to this far along the path, and I'm anxious to move it forward, and I'd be happy to make the motion when the time comes. You know, I hope that what our residents take out of this is what motivated us and what started us on this path was that the need to improve the service, the customer service that our residents were receiving. And, you know, it was originally complaint driven, and then to learn, you know, and then to, when you added up the dollars and cents and saw the revenue lost, and then, you know, there's potential here also where there's definitely going to be improved resident service, but, you know, potential for money generated in the future. But something the deputy mayor just said, and I want clarity on it, and he was saying we're going to be paying these new wages for the new. I just want to be clear. There's no new wages because we're paying that already, right? And we're just going to be paying it to our own staff or our new staff, correct? I just want that out there for I want that clear for our people listening.
Through the chair. So technically there is a new wage expense. So I just want to explain the way that it currently works. We are charged a percentage of water revenues and we pay that to ELK. And so annually, we have a large sum of money. You can see within the report over $400,000 that we pay to ELK. So bringing that in-house, we would no longer be required to make that payment. Instead, we would retain the monies within the town's water and wastewater accounts, and we would cover the staff wage out of that payment that would have typically been a contractor payment. Does that answer?
Thought in the report, I just wanted it clarified for the community.
I do have a question too, and then we'll go to Councillor Guerin. Where do the water write-offs go right now? Like when we have to write off that money, how are we funding that?
Through the chair. So they go to the town's water, wastewater reserves, which means at the end of the day, the ratepayer is funding those write-offs. So having control over write-offs is essential because ultimately at the end of the day, it means controlling and stabilizing any rate increases for your residents.
Through you, Mayor. Yeah, so just I'm gonna touch on the two bill thing. I mean, I would think anyone who's an ELK customer right now this is not normal to get, you know, most municipalities or most places would get two bills, a gas bill or whatever. Yeah, okay. So I had some questions about the payment though. And would much be changed with that? We'd just be setting something up with the bank so that people can just go on and pay right through the banks, okay? And now with respect to the turnover, are we foreseeing like trying to take over like an end of a cycle and then starting a whole new cycle once we take over? Would that be like the game plan?
Through the chair. So we haven't gotten into the concrete details of what the project plan looks like, the exact cutoff. We'd be working extensively with our water department because meter reads have to be incorporated into that cutoff date as well. So we would come up in our project plan with a date that would satisfy ELK, our water department, and the billing function as well. Just hasn't been determined yet.
Yeah, I don't want to get into too much of that because I know you're not there yet, but one of the concerns that I think we're going to run into, and you're going to probably be talking about it, is the accounts that are in arrears, and they're maybe being challenged, whether it's being internally with ELK or through courts or whatever. So that's something might get sloppy for us, but I'm wondering how it works now. Are we giving ELK the direction of how they handle those disputes, or does ELK just handle them the way they want to handle them? And then we either get whatever they find. I mean, how sympathetic are we going to be once we take over for these customers that have pushback on arrears?
The chair. So throughout COVID, we halted as a relief measure of the collection of arrears. What ended up happening was an extensive list got presented to us. We actually had to obtain a legal opinion, and we determined that from the date of billing, you can only go back 2 years. So we've instituted that practice. We would want to keep up with that practice in order to ensure collection remains timely, right? That'd be the ultimate goal. We also don't want to have mixed messaging sent to any of our residents Likely what council would see in the future is similar to what the town of Leamington did, a penalty-free period during the billing transition, right? So that if somebody accidentally paid their old payee, they accidentally paid ELK, we would work with ELK to get that payment. We would not charge them interest during this penalty-free period that council would have to approve. So that's sort of the relief measure we're considering right now. When it comes to arrears, the town has instituted with ELK increased notification. So when an arrears is added to your account, now a letter is sent out. Having that in-house, we'd also be able to amp up that notification, we anticipate, because oftentimes we're unsure of what notification ELK has provided, right? So I'd want to remain with the 2-year arrears policy that we've implemented after the reintroduction of that, but likely institute a penalty-free period for the transition.
Further through you. Yeah, I just believe we're going to get a lot of, they said this and we thought that. And I think we're going to get a lot of that.
A little bit of pain in the short term, but I think it'll be long-term gain as well. Councillor Mady?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yeah, it sounds great. Everything looks great. Thank you for taking care of our residents too, and looking to increase the service level to them while decreasing their costs. That's awesome. That's a win-win for everybody. To go a little bit further with what Councillor Guerin was just saying, there are a few people right now that have paid their ELK bill under dispute. So they're not in arrears, they paid it, but they're disputing that. I'm just wondering if we're gonna have like a mechanism in there for them to continue with that fight, or?
Thank you, through the chair. So because of the process that we started 2 years ago in adding any arrears to taxes, it's ultimately already been shifted to the town. So if anyone has a dispute with arrears that have been added to their tax roll, their mechanism right now is to appear at Finance Committee, and that would remain the same. So the only change would be if they had a dispute before it became an arrears, town staff would be handling it at that point.
Who's prepared to make a motion? Okay, so we're looking for a motion that the Corporate Services Report 2023 be received and that council direct administration to issue a letter of service discontinuance to the external billing provider ELK Energy effective October 1st or the date of final mitigation, that council approve the additional operating revenues and expenditures as detailed in Table A for 2023 with the deficit to be funded by the town's water reserve, that council approve the additional capital revenues and expenditures as detailed in Table B for 2023 to be funded from the town's water reserve, and that council approve the additional capital and operating expenditures as detailed in Table C to be funded from COVID grant monies held in the town's contingency reserve. Moved by Councillor Verbeek, supported by the Deputy Mayor Shepley. My final comment on this is when ELK does the cost of service applications to the Ontario Energy Board, in essence, they are using water money from all of our residents to offset to make their hydro rates even lower for Kingsville residents and Lakeshore residents. So I think this is a really smart move for our town. Okay. Any questions on that motion? All in favor of that motion? Carry unanimously. Great job, Director Drusevich. Legal and Legislative Services 2022-26 Committees of Council. And we will go to Ms. Brown for this, and then we'll take a motion after Shelley's done.
And through you, Madam Mayor, and I'll be really quick because, you know, it's getting late. So, okay. So in December 2022, Council directed administration to review various aspects as it pertains to committees, including the land acknowledgement, hybrid meetings, live stream of committees, per diems, mileage, as well as any new committees. So this time, we're recommending that the procedural bylaw be amended to include the land acknowledgement be read at all committee meetings. That's first. Secondly, at this time, when it comes as it pertains to electronic meetings, at this time, only the council chambers, the large meeting room in the McGregor Community Center has the sufficient IT infrastructure to support any form of electronic meeting. So as we know, we have a lot of committees, so that really restricts the availability of meeting spaces. So Live streaming of meetings creates a permanent record and could subject volunteers to public scrutiny. Due to the concern of its volunteers and limited meeting space to support live streaming, only the Committee of Adjustment is being recommended that to be live streamed, and that is when and where feasible. Should be noted that failure to live stream and or make any make it available electronically will not affect the validity and the legality of the meeting. So any actions taken will not be deemed unlawful as a result of not being able to live stream or provide any kind of electronic participation, which I will refer to as a hybrid meeting, again, requires sufficient IT infrastructure to support. Large meeting room here, council chambers here, and McGregor Community Center are the only three at this time that will support that. For those reasons, we're recommending the festival, arts, culture, tourism, heritage, accessibility, and the Essex BIA be permitted to conduct hybrid meetings. Of those, there are some provisions. The chair must be present, and these are very similar to what you do right now, council. The chair must be present. At the discretion of the chair and in consultation with the staff liaison, no member can participate more than 3 times per year. A member who wishes to participate electronically are counted towards quorum, and the number of participants attending electronically cannot exceed quorum. So then we looked at remuneration. A review of local municipalities was conducted and revealed that the town's per diem rates for committees are currently receiving a per diem was competitive. However, being mindful of the Committee of Adjustment and the Drainage Board on-site meetings, and currently they do not get mileage, we're recommending that their per diems be increased from $125 per meeting for each member. At this time, we're recommending, in September of 2022, Council discussed an attainable housing task force. Administration undertook a review of how other municipalities can structured similar task force, and upon the recommendation of planning services, they're recommending that such an attainable housing task force be created. This would be comprised of a group of qualified laypersons and planning staff. They would meet twice a year and further as needed. Planning services would be the lead in the creation of the terms of reference, and such terms of reference will be brought back to council for consideration. There would be no remuneration as part of this task force. Lastly, bringing forward some terms of reference for the accessibility, arts, culture, tourism, Committee of Adjustment, drainage, Festival, Heritage, Police Services Board, and Property Standards. There is absolutely no change to these committees. This is just so that a lot of them were missing some sort of a formalized terms of reference. All we're doing is just putting them all into one common document so that all the members are completely aware of all of those terms. And I'm here if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. That was really good. Councilor Verbeek?
I'm going to move all these recommendations.
So Verbeek moves that the 2022-26 committees of council, that the legal and legislative report be received, and that the per diem rate for each member of the committees listed below be amended effective April 1st. Committee of Adjustment, $125 per meeting. Drainage Board, $125 per meeting. And that council approve the creation of an attainable housing task force under the direction of planning services, and that the terms of reference in Schedule A in this report be adopted, and that bylaw 2230 being a bylaw to permit certain boards and committees to conduct hybrid meetings and live stream meetings be held a first, a second, and provisionally adopted on March 20th. Need a seconder. Councillor Guerin, any questions? Deputy Mayor Shepley, and then Councillor Mady.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. So these remunerations for the 2 committees, did you look at all committees or just these 2, or are we going to be revisiting other committees throughout the year? I'm just kind of curious on that. Thank you.
Mayor to Deputy Mayor Shepley, we did look at all the committees that currently receive a per diem, and there are 4 of them outlined in the report. The 2 that are not being recommended either exceed what the local comparators were or were at par.
So yeah, that was part of my first question was how competitive are we? Were we off by much? Because if I'm thinking that right now, our remuneration was at $100 per diem. So were we 25% out?
For that, our committee of adjustment and our drainage committees are two committees that are pretty contentious. They do a lot of our kind of like our more contentious work for us, and they're expected to visit a lot of site locations. So the extra $25 with the price of gas is more than fair, I believe.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Mady. So the Committee of Adjustment, the average remuneration through the county was 116. We're recommending 125. Drainage, the average was 105. We're recommending 125. Police Services Board is a little bit different because there is the minimum as set out by the province, which we are meeting, if not exceeding. Property Standards, the average was 107. We're recommending that it stays at 100.
Councillor Mady?
Yeah, so great that we were already competitive. If we want to give a little bit more, fine. But it wasn't like we were underfunding any of our committees. We were already doing a good job. Second, the Attainable Housing Task Force, awesome, especially with zero remuneration. This is going to be a group of eager individuals wanting to work on it. So great job, everybody. That's her. Great job. Thank you very much.
Question to Director Chadwick. Approximately how long do you think until we see the terms of reference for the Attainable Housing Task Force? I know I'm going to get asked that question.
Thank you, Mayor Bondi. It's going to take a little bit of time to think about, the essentially intent, what we're seeking. We have the framework, and we would actually like to bring forward the terms of reference as a part of our next report to council on the various initiatives that we're undertaking as a part of the attainable housing, we'll call it in-house strategy. So I would suspect the spring without tying myself to a specific date, the spring.
Any further questions to the report? We do have a motion, Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Guerin, right? All in favor? That is carried unanimously. 1010 Finance and Business Services 2022 year-end transfers. Looking for a mover that Finance and Business Services report be received, and that unused budget amounts for items identified in Schedule A in this report be transferred to reserves for use designated within Schedule A. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Mady and Councillor McGuire-Blaze. Any questions? This was good information. I enjoyed it. I saw lots of money there. I'm like, ooh. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Reports from youth members, they're coming. County Council update. That will get a mover that all Essex County meetings be listed in agenda item 12 be received in our deputy mayor. Do an update if he so desires. Looking for a mover though. We'll get a mover first. Councillor McGuire-Blaze, seconded by Councillor Hammond. Deputy Mayor Shepley.
To you, Madam Mayor, not much, I'll keep it short. At County Council, we were all encouraged to sign up for our severe weather alerts, and that it is listed on our town website. So if anybody wants to, and they're not currently signed up, it is there. I checked it and signed up for myself. And we received a report from what I found interesting was from Canterbury Elder College for anyone over 55. I'm not quite there yet, but it's a pretty neat thing that they do, and they offer a lot of courses throughout the region for anyone over 55. That's about it.
Library open, so now each small branch of the Essex County Library systems are back open after COVID, so that's pretty exciting. Any questions, those minutes? Or the report? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Correspondence to be received. We'll take a motion to receive all the correspondence, and then if members of council want to pull out any in particulars, they can. So looking for a mover. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Mady. All in favor? Okay, any members of council want to pull out any? Councillor Verbeek?
Madam Chair, just actually 2 items. I'm hoping that we can just pull them and receive and support. Municipality 13.1.2 Municipality of Chatham-Kent, and it's the call to the provincial government to end homelessness in Ontario. I'd like to see us send a letter of support as well. And 13.1.8, and this is the municipality of North Perth. And I remember after my first Roma, I see the mayor nodding, I brought this forward and I'd hoped I could get support. And it was just way too costly for us to do it as a municipality. Well, I think other municipalities started looking at these school bus stop arm cameras and realizing the same thing, that there was a significant cost involved. But there's also the ability to, you can generate fines through these school bus cameras now. And so there is the ability to recoup the funds. But so the municipality of North Perth is requesting that the province take this on. And I would like to see us support that.
Do them one at a time. So 13.1.2, the municipality of Chatham-Kent, moved by Councillor Verbeek to receive and support. We did receive and support this at the county too. Okay. So it's good. Yeah, need a seconder for that motion. Councillor Allard, any questions to that? Seeing none, all in favor. 13.1.8, municipality of North Perth with the school bus cameras, moved by Councillor Verbeek, supported by Councillor Mady. Any questions to this? We're receiving and supporting this. Seeing no questions, all in favor? That's carried unanimously. Okay. 14, committee meeting minutes. Looking for a motion that the committee meeting minutes listed in agenda item 14, together with any recommendations to council noted therein, be received, adopted, and approved as circulated. There's quite a few sets of minutes there. We did have the Essex Community Partnership Fund. We are approving all those grants by approving those minutes. We also, at the Finance Committee, adopted the corporate credit card policy and updated policy. That was really good. And the Finance Committee also recommended that council direct administration to conduct a full review of the Essex Community Partnership Fund in 2023. And this is we felt was a good move to make sure that, when we're giving away money, we're giving away taxpayers' dollars. So we want to make sure that we have a policy to ensure that that we're being fiscally responsible. In the Personnel Committee, we updated the town vehicle policy, which our staff did good work in updating that policy as well. So looking for a mover on all of those. Deputy Mayor Shepley, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor of all those minutes and those actions? Let's carry unanimously. I know, we're tight. Nothing under financial, nothing under new business, and we do have a notice of motion coming forward. I will go to Mrs. Brown here.
Madam Mayor, so the following notice of motion was presented at the February 21st, 2023 regular council meeting, is being brought forward this evening for council's consideration as moved by Councillor Garon and will require a seconder. That council direct administration provide a report on safety measures for the corner of South Talbot Road and Victoria Avenue, which may include lighting and adding a four-way stop.
Here for Councillor McGuire Blaze. Councillor Garon, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, so the motion really stems from resident complaints through myself and other councillors. And the intersection is now closed, and we're starting to see some impacts on the change. I haven't heard of any reported accidents, but a lot of nears. And I just think it's doing due diligence just to see if we can get administration to look at some of the concerns that have been brought forward to myself, including lack of signage, speeding into and out of the town center, lack of lighting. I'm very surprised, and maybe they're just not done the video, but I'm very surprised that we don't have lighting underneath that overpass and lighting on top of the overpass in some areas. And we just got to address the total lack of acknowledgement of any of these existing stop signs are even there. Like people are just, from my reports, are just blowing through them. Taking chances, I think, is what a lot of them are doing. And it's more dangerous, I think, at night more so, and mornings and morning commutes to work and afternoon commutes from work. So people just, I know they have to learn to slow down and abide by the stop signs that we have now, but I still think it's worth at least having a closer look at it.
Blaze?
Through the chair, I also wanted to add to what Councillor Guerin said. In the next couple of years, all of our soccer fields are going to be on the other side of that highway. And it's a really dangerous intersection there's going to be a lot of students who are going to be going under that intersection to access those fields. So I think that when if this is passed, administration does a report, I would really like to see consideration taken into the pedestrians that are going to be accessing that particular corner. The only way for our residents to get across if they're walking or biking, and I know a lot of kids will be biking in the summer to access those parks. So I'd like that taken into consideration as well.
McGuire Blaze, Deputy Mayor Shepley.
I think it's a great motion, Joe. The only thing I'm wondering if maybe we couldn't, for me to look at the speed limit, probably move back to 50 kilometers further out than the other side of that overpass, because that's the real problem more than the lighting and the speed coming in. Because I know even when I come through there, I'm booking, and then when I see the 50, it's like, whoa, I'm in town. You're in town before you realize it because you're going 80. And I think it definitely, especially with the soccer fields and everything there, we definitely got to look at considering backing that up a long ways from town to 50.
I think Kevin and Doug I think our town staff are making notes on all our comments. Councillor Mady and then Councillor Allard.
There. I'm just curious that we're going to be redoing Victoria Avenue right now, right? It goes down to that intersection. So is this report going to be stuff that we want to add on top of our Victoria reconstruction? Or are we already planning on making that area safer as part of our new reconstruction there?
I already answered that.
Sure. Through the mayor. So the scope of the Victoria Avenue roadworks that was approved tonight, actually stops at that intersection. What's out there today is actually an interim condition. So it's the condition in which, the MTO has taken to complete the project. There is a, multi-use trail to still be installed underneath the bridge. There's a pedestrian overhead crossing, push button pedestrian crossing at that intersection to be installed still. So there's a series of work that still has to be completed this summer. But we can, if it's council prerogative for administration to prepare a report, we'll certainly do that for you.
Councillor Allard.
I read Joe's media post, Councillor Guerin's media post, and he had gotten some responses of the lighting. Were you looking for just street lights and a four-way stop, or we're looking for stoplights?
Councillor Allard, I think our administration will bring all that back. But Councillor Guerin,
I'm looking for generally looking, right, whatever. I mean, MTO still might have a plan for lighting there as it is. I think the biggest concern right now is we're going to be getting the spring, summer shortly. And I mean, if I'm on a bike and I want to cross from South Talbot, across Victoria to the other South Talbot across the road, I'm taking a big chance with those cars coming around that underneath that overpass. So there's a lot of moving parts here, a lot of things to be considered, but I'm sure administration's probably already got it on the radar anyways, but a report back is all I'm looking for.
Guerin, for raising the motion. I do also take that way into town, and it feels fast for some reason, and I'm not sure why. I do like your idea of moving back the speed sign. So any further comments to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Good job. Reports and announcements from council members. So let's just start over there at Councillor Mady, and we'll go this way. Councillor Mady, any reports and announcements?
Yeah, Heritage Colchester at the old schoolhouse, we're going to be holding an Easter egg hunt on April 10th, I believe it is. So just mark off your calendars and apply, register online, and it's gonna be a great time. You'll be able to fit into a time bracket. Gonna go on all day. Love to have you all come out.
To the chair. I would just like to say that the Fun Fest is now accepting applications for vendors. So if there are any vendors that are out there that are interested in applying, get them in now so we can get you signed up.
I just want to mention that the Transportation Museum is having a railroad expo on the 2nd of April, 10:03.
All right, I just have to say that Mrs. Joanne Hayes, that taught school at Holy Name for 24 years and is well-known and loved by many. Many remember the ceramic club she ran for 20 years out of the school. If you see her, wish her happy birthday, and happy birthday. Love you, Mom.
Counselor Garen?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to the Essex 73s, our junior hockey club. So a couple things. They play in a 60-team league in Ontario, and they finished second overall this year in overall standings. And we're in the second round of playoff 73 starting tomorrow night against Moortown. And I want to give a shout out to a couple of award winners. Both their goalies won awards for goals against average, and our coaching staff was named coaches of the year. So congrats to them. And come on out and support 73s.
Counselor Hammond? I don't have anything either. All right, bylaws. Bylaw 2228 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a lease agreement between the town of Essex and Patricia Casillas for their operation of concession services known as Ice Cool Treats at 78 Sullivan Street. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Counselor Verbeek, supported by Counselor Allard. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. And that is carried, except for everybody with the deputy mayor who declared conflict. Bylaw 2229 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the March 6th meeting. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Counselor Mady, Counselor Garen, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. That is carried. Bylaws requiring a first, second, and final reading being a 2293 being a bylaw to adopt the operating and capital budget estimates. Looking for a mover. Counselor McGuire Blaze, supported by Counselor Mady. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. That is carried unanimously. Bylaws that require a first and second reading, 2232, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the March 20th regular council meeting be read a first, second, and provisionally adopted March 20th. Moved by Counselor Verbeek, supported by Counselor Mady. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor. I need a motion to adjourn. Counselor Hammond and Deputy Mayor Sheffley. And no questions, all in favor. Thank you for joining us tonight.